Making headlines tonight. 11 events in just 3 days. The Prime Minister attends both the 38th and 39th ASEAN summits online. Cambodia and South Korea ink a new free trade deal that will now need to be ratified by the National Assembly and Senate. And heavy rains in Kampong Speu prompt flooding downstream in southern Phnom Penh. This is the Daily Roundup on the EAC News Channel. A very good evening to you. I'm Andrew Barnes-Roberts. 11 meetings in 3 days. That's Prime Minister Hun Sen's schedule this week as he attends a string of events on the agendas for the 38th and 39th ASEAN summits. The last day, Thursday, will see the Prime Minister receiving the ASEAN chairmanship gavel from outgoing Chairman Brunei, although Cambodia's official chairmanship begins only in January. EAC News reporter Reo Soko has the story.
It's meeting after meeting for Prime Minister Hun Sen. The 30th and 39th ASEAN summits both being held in tandem between Tuesday and Thursday. On Thursday, the Prime Minister will receive the ASEAN chairmanship gavel from Brunei's Sultan Haji Hassan Al Bolkiah. Cambodia will lead ASEAN throughout 2022. It will be the kingdom's third outing as ASEAN chair after 2002 and 2012. Foreign Ministry spokesman Khoi Kong has told EAC News that although Cambodia will receive the ASEAN gavel on Thursday, Brunei will remain in charge until the end of the year. The Prime Minister is delivering remarks to a total of 11 summit events this week, covering a range of topics, including the building of the ASEAN community, exchanging views on regional and international issues, and the bloc's response to COVID-19. The 30th and 39th ASEAN summits are being held under the theme, We Care, We Prepare, We Are Moving Forward. They're being attended by every ASEAN head of state except Myanmar. ASEAN leaders have already agreed to promote multilateralism, which includes the need to maintain unity, coherence, and resilience, the peaceful settlement of disputes, strengthening ASEAN centrality, reaffirming the ASEAN Indo-Pacific perspective, and the regional comprehensive economic partnership. They have also adopted 13 key documents. 3 of them are focused on digital transformation across the bloc, tackling the growing reality of climate change and the elimination of threats to children in the region. Rhea Soko, EAC News.
Leaders of ASEAN countries, including Prime Minister Hun Sen, have agreed to upgrade their partnership with China to the level of a comprehensive strategic partnership. This was concluded during the 24th ASEAN-China summit held virtually on Tuesday. Of 5 key agenda points, 3 were approved. These are the joint declaration to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the ASEAN-China Dialogue Partnership, the joint declaration on ASEAN-China comprehensive cooperation under the ASEAN framework, and the strengthening on green and sustainable practices. Progress on the implementation of the action plan to implement the ASEAN-China Strategic Partnership for Peace and Prosperity 2021 through 2025 and the concept paper on strengthening China's technical cooperation with ASEAN have both been noted. The ASEAN-China heads of government have agreed to hold a meeting next month to mark the 30th anniversary of their dialogue partnership. China has been acknowledged as ASEAN's largest trading partner and investor. Leaders have also expressed their gratitude to China for its continued support of ASEAN countries, especially through the provision of vaccines. China's contribution was also praised in helping building alliances and cooperation in the fields of health and other sectors. The Chinese government has pledged another $10 million to the ASEAN-China Cooperation Fund, which aims to support ASEAN students studying in China.
Prime Minister Hun Sen has attended the 22nd ASEAN-Korea Summit. Tuesday's virtual summit between ASEAN and the Republic of Korea adopted the 23rd ASEAN ROC Declaration on promoting cooperation as well as the strategic partnership for peaceful prosperity 2021 to 2025. On Tuesday, Cambodia and Korea signed a bilateral free trade agreement aiming to draw in new investment and businesses from the East Asian country and to boost exports. As the Republic of Korea expressed continued support in the region, ASEAN countries have thanked Korea for its help with providing vaccines. The ASEAN and South Korean heads of government also welcomed the establishment of a new ministerial-level mechanism to promote cooperation in the field of disaster management between the two countries. The Korean government has highlighted its continued support in ASEAN's core role and unanimity in the regional mechanism. As of 2020, Korea remains the fourth largest trading partner in ASEAN and the fifth largest source of investment in the bloc. With this, the two parties are working to boost the economy in the trade sector and to promote the implementation of the Regional Strategic Partnership Agreement. It also promotes further free market cooperation between ASEAN and Korea.
In breaking news, Prime Minister Hun Sen has announced the first step in the reopening of Cambodia's international borders to fully vaccinated tourists. On his Facebook page late on Tuesday afternoon, the Prime Minister announced that the Ministry of Tourism has decided that the first destinations to open will be Sihanoukville, its island of Koh Rong, and the Koh Kong resort town of Darussakhor from Tuesday the 30th of November. The second stage of the country's reopening will be Siem Reap from January. In making the announcement, the Prime Minister stated that after suffering from COVID-19 for 2 years, Cambodia has finally announced the reopening of international tourism. What Cambodia is calling its vaccine tourism program will allow fully vaccinated tourists to arrive in the reopened area and remain there for 5 days before they are allowed to visit other parts of the country if a PCR test taken on the 4th day is negative for COVID-19. To qualify for the vaccine tourism program, tourists will first need to request an admission letter when they apply for their e-visa in their home country. They will need to provide a vaccination certificate at this point. Their accommodation will need to be booked and paid for in advance at hotels deemed part of the country's safe tourism program. They will also need health insurance as well as a negative PCR test issued within 72 hours of their departure. Information on their travel history in the 14 days before their arrival in the kingdom will also need to be submitted. On arrival in Cambodia, tourists will need to take a rapid test to confirm their COVID-19 status before they can start enjoying their holiday in the Kingdom of Wonder. Cambodia and South Korea have signed a new free trade agreement. The document was signed via video conference on Tuesday morning by the ministers of commerce of the two countries. The royal government expects that the free trade agreement will help draw more investment and investors into the kingdom. EAC News reporter Yuri Matosko has the story.
Minister of Commerce Pang So-sak met online with his Republic of Korea counterpart Eo Han-koo. They came together to sign the Cambodian-Korean Free Trade Agreement, which has been in the pipeline for months. A draft document was finally concluded back in February. Now the agreement has been signed, it needs to be ratified by the National Assemblies and Senates of both nations, and in Cambodian's case, signed by His Majesty King Norodom Sihamoni. When each country informs the other that the necessary ratifications have been concluded, the CKFTA will come into effect 60 days later. Minister of Commerce Pang So-sak believes the CKFTA will open a wider market for Cambodian products. According to the Korean International Trade Organization, bilateral trade between Cambodia and South Korea was valued at $885 million in 2020, up 18% on the year before. Over just the first 8 months of this year, that trade volume had topped more than $515 million. This is the second free trade agreement Cambodia has recently signed. On 9 September, the National Assembly ratified the Cambodian-China FTA. Yuri Matosko, EAC News.
Cambodia's daily COVID-19 figures are now at levels not seen for almost 7 months. The daily death toll is also falling. On Tuesday, the Health Ministry confirmed just 112 new COVID-19 cases by way of PCR tests. That number has not been that low since 97 cases were reported on the 7th of April. 8 more deaths have been reported overnight, though. There have been 263 patients discharged in the past 24 hours, taking the number of active cases down to just 1,715. The latest stats take the kingdom's total COVID-19 case count to exactly 118,000. The death toll has reached 2,751. The number of patients treated successfully has climbed to 113,527. The royal government is steadily moving the country into its new normal. It has already reduced quarantine for fully vaccinated travellers and has now announced there'll be no need to quarantine at all for frontline medical workers and air passengers from Thailand. EAC News reporter Yuri Matosko has that story.
As promised, Prime Minister Hun Sen has instructed the Tourism Ministry to reciprocate with Thailand, which is allowing quarantine-free travel for fully vaccinated Cambodians from next week. Cambodia will now do the same for air passengers arriving from Thailand. It is hoped the move will resume regular scheduled flights between the two countries. As of now, only charter flights are available. At the same time, there's much less quarantine for the country's frontline healthcare workers, not when they travel, but when they come off shift. For much of the past year, they've had to quarantine for 14 days every time they come off a rotational shift. The Interministerial Committee to Combat COVID-19 has now decided to do away with that. Those working in full contact with COVID-19 patients can now return home to quarantine for just 4 days if they first show a negative PCR test result. Those not in contact with COVID-19 patients won't have to quarantine at all, provided they are COVID-19 negative when finishing their shift. The decision has been signed off by Prime Minister Hun Sen based on the high number of vaccinated doctors and medical workers, as well as the government's general easing of restrictions. Yuri Matosko, EAC News.
After almost 16 years, the extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia will permanently close by the end of 2022. This was confirmed during Monday's plenary session of the National Assembly. The ECCC is considered a hybrid court created by the Cambodian government in conjunction with the United Nations. Its main purpose was to provide justice to Cambodians who were victims of the Khmer Rouge. EAC News reporter Reo Soko has that story.
Commonly known as the Cambodia Tribunal or Khmer Rouge Tribunal, the court has heard a litany of pain and suffering. The extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia was established for the trials of the Khmer Rouge senior leaders and those most responsible for violations of international law during the Cambodian genocide. It was established in February 2006, and after almost 16 years, the court is set to close. The National Assembly's plenary session on Monday confirmed that it will be closed by the end of next year. Khmer Rouge Tribunal spokesman Neth Pektra has told EAC News that before concluding its mission, the court has 3 more tasks. One of the biggest is the appeal of Khieu Samphan, Pol Pot's last henchman, and the last surviving leader of the Khmer Rouge. A ruling in his appeal is not expected before the 4th quarter of 2022. Reyes Soko, EAC News.
The Banteay Meanchey Provincial Administration has announced that all migrant workers returning to Cambodia and quarantining on arrival will now be vaccinated before leaving quarantine. The province is also preparing a unified quarantine centre that will house all migrant workers coming from Thailand. EAC News reporter Yuri Matosko has the details.
Banteay Meanchey provincial spokeswoman Ruth Sapani accompanied the director of the Department of Health, Run Suti, on an inspection for the new quarantine center in the city of Poipet, in Banteay Meanchey's Malay district. The Samdek Oi High School is being turned into a unified quarantine center for workers returning from Thailand. Right now, returning workers are being quarantined at a number of schools that need to be cleared out and cleaned for the resumption of classes. Provincial spokeswoman Ruth Sapani has confirmed that 2,013 workers are currently staying in quarantine. With the arrangements for the unified center, the provincial authorities plan to accommodate around 2,400 workers. The director of the Provincial Department of Health has announced that migrant workers who have completed their quarantine period will be vaccinated before being allowed to make their way home, where they will need to get their second dose. The construction of the new quarantine center is scheduled to be completed over the next few days. Yuri Matosko, EAC News.
Residents of the capital's Dangkor district have been caught up in flooding. At least 6 communes are experiencing severe flooding due to heavy rainfall and the release of water from the dam in Kampong Spu. The rainfall and the released water from that dam have all led to a sharp rise in the level of the Prek Not River. EAC News reporter Reo Soko has the details.
Deputy Governor of Phnom Penh's Dangkao district, Chu Kim Sor, has warned residents to be extra vigilant with water levels continuing to rise. The river has burst its banks, swamping at least 6 communes. They are Dangkao, Prek Campos, Sak Sampo, Tien, Kung Noi, and Spian Khmer. The Ministry of Water Resources and Meteorology issued an alert on Monday that the current weather situation may result in flooding in 13 provinces and in the capital. It says that there is an active low-pressure system in the South China Sea, which will develop into a typhoon, reaching southern Vietnam on Wednesday before affecting Cambodia in the days that follow. Local authorities, along with the National Committee for Disaster Management, are now preparing to evacuate the most affected families of Dangkao district, while provincial governments across the country continue to monitor their areas of responsibility in case rescue operations are needed. Rhea Soko, EAC News.
Now for a look at news making international headlines this Tuesday, the 26th of October.
Thousands of Sudanese pro-democracy protesters have streamed onto the streets of the capital to reject a military coup that has toppled the transitional government that had ruled the country since the ouster of longtime dictator Omar al-Bashir. The Sudan Doctors Committee has reported that security forces opened fire on protesters on Monday, killing at least 3 demonstrators and wounding another 80. Sudan's top military leader, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, has declared a state of emergency across the nation. He says he dissolved the government due to political quarrels that were threatening the security of the country. He says a provisional government would soon be appointed to lead the country to elections in July 2023. Footage shows people chanting slogans and burning tires on the streets after soldiers arrested most of the members of the Sudan's cabinet. Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok is under house arrest at an undisclosed location.
339 migrants have been rescued by the Italian Coast Guard in collaboration with European Union External Border Management Agency Frontex in a Romanian border police naval unit. The group had left eastern Libya and were traveling on a fishing boat when bad weather battered parts of southern Italy. The migrants were rescued off the coast of Calabria, which was hit by floods over the weekend. Data from the Italian Interior Ministry shows 52,665 migrants have arrived in Italy so far this year.
And a new development in the ongoing eruption on La Palma in Spain's Canary Islands. Another lava channel has appeared after a second cone of the volcano partially collapsed. It sent lava gushing downhill. Volcanologists say there's no way of telling when the eruption will end, with no data to indicate that volcanic activity in Campo Riviera is decreasing. It's suspected that the eruption could go on for months rather than weeks. Lava from the volcano has covered nearly 900 hectares of land, destroying 2,000 buildings. More than 7,000 people have had to evacuate their homes.
Stay with the Daily Roundup. Coming up after the break, a look at the day's sports news. EAC News fully supports the Royal Government of Cambodia's preventative and administrative measures against COVID-19. But we need you to play your part in helping bring the 20 February community transmission event to an end. Wash your hands regularly, sanitize wherever possible. Keep an eye on your body temperature. Use the Stop COVID QR code and maintain a safe social distance. But above all, please, please, please wear a mask. Only together can we beat COVID-19. EAC News' audience is growing. Our YouTube channel has over 150,000 verified subscribers. To mark the milestone, we've received the Silver Creator Award from YouTube. It's given to channels with over 100,000 subscribers. YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki says the award celebrates EAC News' hard work and incredible achievement. She says we brought a unique voice and style to the world, but have also created valuable connections and built a community along the way. The next milestone we're going for is 1 million subscribers, and we'd really like that Gold Creator Award. So if you're not already a subscriber, head to YouTube and search for EAC News. Subscribers get alerts when the Daily Roundup is premiering and live events are streaming. Get all the latest breaking news and updates from Cambodia in English. The EAC News channel on YouTube. Cambodia made clear. If it's happening and you need to know about it, you'll get it all right here. EAC News brings you updates and breaking news in English across all of our platforms and channels. The EAC News app, YouTube, Facebook, Telegram, Twitter, and our website www.eacnews.asia. Join me, Andrew Barnes-Roberts, and the rest of the EAC News team every day on your favorite channels. EAC News, Cambodia made clear. Cambodia's under-23 football team have been beaten 4-0 by Japan in their under-23 Asian Cup qualifier. The match was played on Tuesday morning at the J Village Stadium in Hirono. It was a major come-down after last week's surprise win over Hong Kong. Cambodia went into Tuesday's match on top of Group K thanks to that 4-2 win over Hong Kong on Sunday. While they played with determination against their hosts, Cambodia was simply outclassed on Tuesday morning. Japan's goals coming at regular intervals throughout the match, and they were 4-0 up by the time the final whistle was blown. The win puts Japan on top of the group and into the finals in Uzbekistan next year, but Cambodia will still join them. As runner-up in the group, they will still go through, but that's assuming Hong Kong don't beat Japan when they face each other on Thursday. It's all down to the maths over the next few days, but if Japan do beat Hong Kong, then Cambodia are through to the finals of the Asian Football Confederation's Under-23 Asian Cup. Unvaccinated players will be able to take part in next year's Australian Open, but only after undergoing 14 days of quarantine. The ruling has been leaked to US media in the form of an email from the WTA. It contradicts a statement made last week by Australia's immigration minister that players would need to be fully vaccinated in order to obtain a visa.
A significant proportion of players on the women's WTA and men's ATP Tour remain unvaccinated. Men's world number 1 Novak Djokovic has even refused to reveal his vaccination status. In the leaked email, the WTA said it wanted to clear up false and misleading information about the conditions players would face at the Australian Open. The WTA says its information has come from Tennis Australia, which has apparently asked players to keep it confidential for a few days as they were still discussing the details with the Australian government. Tennis Australia has declined to make any further comment on arrangements for unvaccinated players, including quarantine. All players who arrived from overseas for the 2021 edition of the Australian Open had to undergo 2 weeks of quarantine, although most were allowed to leave their hotel rooms to practice. Victoria State Sports Minister Martin Pakula says authorities are still deciding whether unvaccinated foreigner players will be allowed into the country. He says a decision is not expected for another couple of weeks. The Australian Open is scheduled to start on 17 January.
Beijing has officially opened its aptly named National Sliding Center ahead of the 2022 Winter Olympics. It's holding an international skeleton and bobsleigh test event with just over 100 days to go until the Winter Olympics begin. The competition is sanctioned by the International Skeleton and Bobsleigh Federation and is an Olympic qualifying event. The recently completed National Sliding Center lies in the northwest suburbs of China's capital and is one of several venues that have been specially constructed for the Games. Monday's events included the women's and men's skeleton, where athletes lie on a board and shoot down head first at speeds of over 100 kilometers an hour. German athletes won first prize in both categories. In total, 240 athletes from 23 countries are scheduled to compete across the 2 days of competition after a rigorous testing protocol for COVID-19.
Yeah, we've had a long journey till we came here because we tested in Frankfurt and then got our flight a day later. And tested in Beijing again, and yeah, we do PCR tests every day. We have to, and yeah, we can't go out of the hotel complex, but I guess it's okay. The complex is very big, and we can see the track, and the view from the track is very beautiful. We've also done a bus trip to the Great Wall and through the Expo Park. It was very beautiful.
It's similar. We were very lucky in that we got to do a full season last year. So a lot of it was very similar to that in terms of getting tests before you kind of flew anywhere. We had lots of COVID tests kind of throughout the week. So I think a lot of athletes have just got used to that in the past. It's just what the world is like at the moment. So I think we're all mainly just happy that we can compete. We can be here.
Yeah, I had very great experience here because I really like the track. In my opinion, it's maybe one of the best tracks in the world. It has everything. It has fast parts, very hard parts. You have to steer a lot. You also have to have a good feeling for the track. So I really like it.
On Monday, the organisers of the Beijing 2022 Winter Games released their guidelines, effectively stating that COVID measures for athletes for these test events would be largely repeated for next year's Winter Olympics. Despite concerns about the ongoing pandemic, China has maintained that the world's biggest winter sports event will take place as scheduled between the 4th and 20th of February. All right, let's have a look at what the weather's up to tomorrow. And finally, Don't tell Elton John, but 2 pairs of bejeweled 17th century spectacles from India are to go on auction at Sotheby's in London on Wednesday. Set with diamond and emerald lenses, they're expected to fetch at least $3 million each. The glasses were commissioned by an unknown 17th century prince, with the precious stone lenses believed to boost spiritual enlightenment. One pair, named Gate of Paradise, features emerald lenses set in diamond-mounted frames. The other pair, called Halo of Light, has diamond lenses set in diamond-encrusted frames. The lenses are said to date from the 17th century, while the frames were made about 200 years later.
Well, we're offering these 2 pairs of extraordinary spectacles in our sale. So the Arts of the Islamic World in India, which is taking place on the 27th of October. There are so many stories behind these spectacles. I think I would start with the fact that the emeralds came all the way from Colombia in the 17th century through Portuguese merchant ships to the Mughal Empire. So the Mughals absolutely loved gemstones. The diamonds came from the Golconda mines. And at the Mughal court, these were cleaved from stones which originally would have weighed 200 to 300 carats. So you must imagine the amount of mastery involved. And they were also originally, another side is that originally they would have been in the shape of pince-nez. So their current settings are 19th century settings. So they were refashioned in their current 19th century spectacle-like fashion.
Sotheby's is hoping that a museum or private collector buys the spectacles, with them having so much history. All too often, pieces like these are bought on auction only for them to be broken up and the stones then sold on for profit. Bidding will open on Wednesday at around $2 million a pair. Thank you for watching the Daily Roundup here on the EAC News channel. You'll get more breaking news and updates from our website. Head to www.eacnews.asia. You can also search for EAC News on Telegram and at your favorite app store. More from the EAC News team in the Daily Roundup tomorrow night at 8. I will see you then.